Good evening, class. This is Mrs. Albright, and tonight we are working on Module 3, Lesson 34, and our objective this evening is to multiply two-digit multiples of 10 by two-digit numbers using a place value chart. So make sure you have a scratch paper or a whiteboard so that you can work through these problems along with me, and let's get started. Just as a review and to help us get warmed up for this new concept, I want to bring to your attention what we have already practiced before, where we have a 1 times a 1. So 4 ones times 3 ones would equal 12 ones. If we change this to 4 tens, or 40 times 3 ones, well, that would be 12 tens, or we would write that as 120. We've also learned how to multiply two multiples of 10. So for example, 40 times 30. This is 4 tens times 3 tens, so that ends up being 12 hundreds, and we would write that as 1,200. So that is going to help us as we're learning how to multiply a multiple of 10, like 40, by a two-digit number. So to get started, we're going to take this problem 40 times 22. I'm going to start off by drawing an area model. And I'm going to put 22 on one side and 40 on the other. Now this is new territory for us. We haven't solved problems like this before. But what I can do is I can decompose that 40, so it's 4 times 10, and I can divide this side of the area model as 4 tens. Now we've already learned how to multiply two-digit numbers by 10, so if I just did 22 times 10, I would be able to get the answer to this part of the area model. I could do that 4 times and then add them up. So I could rewrite this equation here as 4 times 10 times 22. And I can multiply that in different ways. I can multiply the 10 times 22 first, which would be 220, and then multiply that by the 4, which you've already learned how to do problems like that to get the final answer. So we're going to solve this problem, the same problem, using a place value chart. So again, if I take the same problem, 40 times 22, and I create my place value chart with my ones, tens, and hundreds, I'm going to start by putting my 20 2 tens. So I'm starting with this number, and I'm going to multiply that by 4. Well, I'm not multiplying it by 4. I'm going to break this down so it's 4 times 10. So I'm going to multiply each of these by 10 first. So those 2 ones become 2 tens, and these 2 tens become 2 hundreds. And then I'm going to multiply each of those by 4 and make 4 groups. So here I have 2 tens. I'm going to make 4 groups of 2 tens, and then I can add these up. I have 0 ones, 8 tens, and 8 hundreds. So the way I just solved this was by multiplying these numbers by 10 first. I could solve the same problem by multiplying by 4 first. So let's say I started again with my 22 and I'm multiplying it by 40. I can multiply it by 4 first and make 4 groups of 2 ones and make 4 groups of 2 tens, and then take this whole bundle and multiply this bundle times 10, and then multiply this whole bundle times 10. And I would end up with the same answer. So it doesn't matter after you decompose this problem, 4 times 10 times 22, it doesn't matter if you multiply these two numbers first and then multiply that by 4, or if you multiply these two numbers first and then multiply that by 22. Our next problem is 50 times 31. So again, I'm going to decompose this 50 so that I think of it as 5 times 10. So I can rewrite this whole equation instead of 50 times 31, 5 times 10 times 31. And I can multiply these first and then multiply that answer by 5. So let's model it on the place value chart and see how we get our solution. I'm going to start with the 31, my 3 tens, and my 1 1, and I'm going to multiply this by 10. So these are all going to shift over one place value column. So my 1 1 becomes 110, my 3 tens becomes 300s. I just multiplied by 10. Now I'm going to do the next step. So 10 times 31, that would be 310, my answer to this, which you can see in the place value chart. Now I'm going to multiply that by 5 to get my final answer. So this 110, I'm going to multiply that by 5, so I end up with 5 tens. And then my 300s, I am also going to multiply by 10. So I end up with I'm going to multiply it by 5. So I end up with 5 groups of 300s. So altogether, if I count up my place value discs, I have 5 10s, 0 1s. And over here I have 15, which means I have to bundle 10 of them and regroup that. I'm going to add another column into the thousands. So it would be 1,550. Now if I look at this problem, the 5 times 31, I could multiply my 5, which I have here in my original problem, the 5 tens, times the 31. And if I multiplied that over here, 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 3 is 15, and then took that answer, my 155, and multiplied that by 10, I would get to the same answer as well. So my final answer for this problem is 1,550. We're going to go through one more without using a place value chart, and here we have 3 tens times 43. So I'm going to decompose this as 3 times 10, and then I still have my 43. So now I have a new equation written out. So I can multiply these two numbers first, my 43 times 3, and think of this as taking the 3, multiply it by the 43, and I got 129, and then take that whole amount, 129, and multiply that by 10, and I end up with 1,290. So that's a different way to solve these problems, where we start with the 3, multiply that by your 2-digit number, and then add that 0 because you're multiplying it by 10 at the end. Please take your time on the quiz questions. Use your whiteboard or scratch paper and draw those place value charts, or rewrite the equations, decompose them as you need to get the answers to these problems. Make sure you bring back any questions you have to class. We will continue working on this tomorrow, and have a great night.